When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello guys. Welcome back to the Grease Goblin channel. I am sitting for today since we are doing a reaction. But you guys may notice by the thumbnail, the video, we're going to be reacting to someone who has a contradicting opinion than my own, that House of the Dragon is very boring, it's not very good. And so, you know, I saw this video pop up on my recommended and I was like, hey, let's give it a watch. You know, it's always fun to dive into some spicy takes. And I do like reacting to opinions that are different from my own, maybe see some other people's, you know, different sides of it. And I have, you know, previewed this video. I wanted to make sure it was good enough quality for the channel to react to. So I do just know some things that were said in this video. It has been like, I think like a week or two since I've actually watched this. I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember it was interesting to say the least. If you do want to watch this video in its original content or whatever, the link will be the top in the description if you want to watch it and then come back and see what my thoughts are, or, you know, whatever. But yeah, this person, based on the title and their thumbnail, says that House of the Dragon is boring as hell. Now, this is an interesting idea because I think, you know, for House of the Dragon specifically, this is what they feared a lot of people would think about the show, that it was too boring. And so one of the big criticisms I had on Voice of Old Town, a lot of the community have had, is there was just elements at times where they did things and put things into the show because they did not trust the audience to be entertained, to really like these intellectual themes that they brought to the show and the conversations. And so let's see what his thoughts are. Also, I have no idea who this is. I don't know if this is like it looks like kind of maybe a political show, so I'm not sure, but let's react to this. I've never heard of this person before.
So we wanted to do a video of my reviewing House of the Dragon, the prequel to Game of Thrones, and I watched 5 episodes of it, and I kept coming into the studio and they would say to me, the producers would say to me, have you finished House of the Dragon? I would say, no, I'll get to it. And I thought, why?
I definitely can like relate to that with some of my friends because I kept pestering them to watch Game of Thrones and they would have like that same reaction, but we'll see where this goes.
Why should I get to it? I don't like it. It's not any good. It's boring as hell. And I really don't want to. The reason I haven't watched more of it is because I'm not interested.
So that's the root of the problem, or I guess the difference in opinion that we're going to have. What made him think that the show was boring or he didn't like the show? That's what's going to be very interesting. Again, everybody has the right to their own opinion. I'm here trying to maybe defend why the show is not those things with my own opinion.
I'm instead going to review why I wouldn't finish House of the Dragon after loving Game of Thrones. And I think the best way to approach this is to speak first about what it was about Game of Thrones that at its peak, obviously it trailed off at the end. They kind of blew the ending. But
so I'm glad that he recognizes that, again, there was a dip in quality and he, you know, liked the earlier seasons of the show. But I do find it very interesting that he compares Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, where I think House of the Dragon was not as good as the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, but I do think like what they were trying to do, and for the most part, again, 90% of it, I would say, was very similar to the quality of the
at its peak,
Game of
I
Thrones.
seriously was more excited to find out who was going to win the Iron Throne than who was going to become president of the United States.
Fair.
I
think that was a lot of the sentiment of the world.
Become almost real to me, and that really is what, you know, what a work of art can do when it's really cooking.
Yeah, and that's the great part about Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, like with our community, right? Like I am someone that is very heavily involved in this community, that I enjoy it much more than many other things.
And it was cooking. And what was it about the show that was so great? I mean, the sex stuff, what they call the sex position, where whenever somebody was explaining the complex family ties, there were always 2 women.
Dude, okay, so I always forget this scene, but the scene where Littlefinger is explaining like his whole motivations while the 2 sex workers are going at is the scene he's referring to. That scene,
banging each other in the background.
Yep.
This is an HBO trick. They use it for the first 2 seasons and then they stop doing it because they want to lure people in. That didn't mean much to me, you know, except it was fun to watch.
Very
but that was not what it was that drew me in. It was the incredible characters.
Okay, so this is important to understanding why he doesn't like House of the Dragon, right? So he talks about incredible characters. Let's keep going because this is going to be vital to trying to dissect what the difference is.
George R.R. Martin was willing to kill them off, so you never really knew what was going to happen. The cynical and down-to-earth philosophy of the piece, which was that power is everything, basically. Power is what people fight for and what people die over, and if you don't fight and play the power game, you get killed. And
so far, from my opinion, everything he has just mentioned is very present in House of the Dragon. If you even think about where I'm not going to get into spoilers, but where actually the House of the Dragon is going to go, it really dives into those, right? Like the cynicism of the world, right? The realism of this, where you're going to be able to kill characters. I mean, think about how many characters die in House of the Dragon, right? None of our main characters really die, you know, so maybe that's a difference from a Game of Thrones, but you know, as we go forward, that's going to change, right? And so, you know, I could see maybe why he still has that opinion that, you know, the first season of House of the Dragon didn't have that big leap, right? Like Game of Thrones, Ned dies, he's the main character. So if you equivalent that to House of the Dragon, it would be like Rhaenyra or Alicent dying, for instance. Just wasn't going to happen in this first season because the story is just much different. But a lot of the things he just talked about, great characters. I mean, there are pretty good characters. Viserys, Rhaenyra, Viserys, Alicent, really strong characters. So,
you know, like that may or may not be the case, but that was the world of the work of art. And that was one of the reasons I thought the women characters were so interesting. A lot of people complained, for instance, there were a lot of rapes. And I thought, well, yeah, if there are no guns, you're going to get raped. I mean, that's how power works. And so I thought.
It's interesting that he says there's no guns, women are going to get raped. That's a very weird like comment to make. It makes it sound like very political, so I don't know if that's where he's going. Again, he looks like he has a very political like talk show, I'm assuming, but no, that's not the point actually at all. The point is women in this society, I talk about this quite a lot, and it's something he's going to bring up in this like statement he says, is that women were very powerful in Game of Thrones, and it showed on the secondary media, Cersei and Sansa, characters that, and Marjorie as well, that are very similar in ideologies to Rhaenyra and Alicent, right? And Arya specifically. I think Arya and Sansa are the greatest parallel that we have in the main story to Rhaenyra and Alicent. But the whole thing that he's missing there is that women do not have equal rights as men in this society. Women are basically there to have kids, right? That's their whole thing. Alicent's whole first 5 episodes of her arc is about that exact thing, right? She's let, you know, all these people control what she's going to do, and kind of after episode 5, the green dress episode, she's going to kind of start making her own decisions, things like that. So a very weird line. Yeah, but I guess we'll continue.
They were beaten into political correctness. They were beaten into having women warriors and things like that, which I just thought was garbage. But I thought for a long time, a long period, you were actually watching a fantasy that was more real than some of the reality shows. The other thing about 100%. It is the stakes were genuinely brilliantly depicted. Khaleesi rises up. She's nobody. She's a piece of human flesh that they're trading around. But through her luck and pluck, she makes her way and becomes more and more powerful, more and more dominant as a character.
So I find it very interesting, actually, here that he talks about stakes, because Daenerys is one of the characters with actually the lowest stakes until the end of the show, right? The characters with a lot of stakes are the ones that are like heavily involved in the War of the Five Kings early on. So Tywin, Tyrion, Robb, Stannis, Renly. A lot of those characters have much higher stakes, even Ned in the first season. Dany is a character that, like, she has stakes, but it's for her own, like, journey, which is good. The things he talked about are completely right.
Arc of the character is she starts to care about the slave. She starts to care about the little guy because she was a little guy, because she was abused. And so
exactly.
you want her to become the liberator of these people. You don't care that she happens to be the powerful person. You just care that she becomes the liberator of the nations. But at the same time, as she accrues power, she starts to be separated from that little person that she was. And that's a fascinating
let's
arc
keep going.
Of character. And it was the whole.
Okay. So he's right and wrong on in my opinion, how I view Daenerys. I think Daenerys, you know, some of the most intriguing parts of her characters, how does she like deal with that? Like, she's not this character that's just blindly good, right? She has to make some decisions that are tougher, right? Like when it comes to slavery, not everybody likes, even the slaves, that slavery is going. Like the older people that have, you know, roles and jobs, and now slavery's gone, they're homeless. And so she has to deal with those struggles. She has to deal with her dragons, things of that nature that are really important. And Daenerys, to a degree, yes, becomes more of this character that recognizes her own power, kind of gets away a little bit from the little people. But I hope he's not trying to connect that with her being like evil or
story
something.
of the piece. And the women were fairly well depicted. When they had a warrior woman, she was big and ugly, and it was and ungainly, and she felt bad about that. She missed her femininity, but she still wanted to be a warrior, and that was a real character that you could identify with, instead of these women who are 5'4" little nothings, but they can duel with everybody else that I complain about all the time, only because it breaks the rules. It breaks the rules of reality.
I get what he's saying there, especially with Brienne, because she's a character that inherently is someone that wishes they could be an actual woman, but that's just not the way things went for them. So she used her strengths, right? She defends herself. I've been doing my Feast for Crows reread, and one of the best parts about her character is how she can't trust people because of her position, who she is. And so yeah, I agree. I think the show did not do a great job with Brienne's character arc. But yeah,
it breaks the rules of most of the stories they're telling.
Okay, so you might want to notice why we just skip so much time. It's because he did an ad read for literally a minute and a half. But I want to point out, we're over halfway into this video. He has not mentioned a single criticism of House of the Dragon. So yeah, just gonna leave it there.
It looked beautiful. When it opened up, I thought this is going to be great. The first episode I loved, and most of what I loved about it was visual. I just thought I would so much rather look at this than a Jackson Pollock painting. I would so much rather.
That's a very weird take, because yes, House of the Dragon, it does look good. It has a very high standard when it comes to that. But the reason that I think most people like House of the Dragon is not because of visuals, right? If you want really good visuals, you watch Rings of Power. The reason a lot of people liked episode 1 is because there's some really interesting moments. There's interesting character dynamics. Viserys and Daemon, their dynamic. Rhaenyra and Alicent, how does that affect their relationship, given that they're two different people? When we have Viserys, who is this character that kind of seems likable, and he's someone that has to make a decision. He's so caught up in trying to get a male heir because of prophecy or dreams or whatever that, it causes him to make some very, bad actions when it comes to his wife, some really morally bad decisions. And so there's some really intriguing things going on as we see the political parts of this show kind of evolve.
Look at this and go to any museum that shows artwork after the 19th century. I mean, this is beautiful. This is the imagination come to life. This is technology being used to create the visual imagination and enhance the visual imagination. For the most part,
they did a great job.
And I love that. Then, however, the story had no stakes whatsoever.
Where's the stake?
All it was women complaining.
Okay, so the fact that he says there's no stakes is interesting, because the show doesn't take that long to really introduce you into the stakes, right? The stakes are, by the end of episode 1, getting into episode 2, is that Rhaenyra is named the heir. How does a woman rule in this society when it's never happened before? Like we've talked about, he even built this up in his video. Women are in a place of lesser power in this world. So how will all of these men who are going to be prejudiced and biased against women, how are they going to accept Rhaenyra as a ruler? And what Rhaenys says to her, which is one of the best parts of it, is that they are not going to. And so the stakes are built up right away. And the stakes only get enhanced because Alicent then ends up being, in this weird scenario, her stepmother. So her friend basically betrays her. But now you're also going to have, as the stakes get even more, because it all just layers and builds on. Because the beginning of the story, it's kind of set up as Daemon versus Rhaenyra for who's going to be the next king. But then you also have the next layering that, okay, hold on a second. Now Alicent is giving Viserys male children. Well, what does that mean for Rhaenyra? Because again, traditionally, the male heir comes before the female heir. So now there's this, again, the stakes that is Rhaenyra going to keep her place as heir, or is she going to be, or is it going to be Aegon? And so you already, from within the first 3 to 4 episodes, you already have what the story is going to be about. It's going to be, once Viserys dies, which is again foreshadowed over and over again throughout the entire season with his condition worsening and worsening, who is going to be the ruler after? Because we see the sides forming. And the first 5 episodes, one of my favorite, dynamics is between young Alicent and Rhaenyra. And so when we get this guy here who's saying there's no stakes, that's just, maybe he didn't feel the stakes. Maybe he didn't think that the heightenedness was there. I'm not sure. But then he goes to the next part here that it's just about women complaining. It's just well, yeah, some of them, they're going to be complaining because Rhaenyra is someone that she's going to have to fight like hell to literally just to be queen, even when her father is making her the heir, because people are, again, prejudiced against her. And when you have so many things going on, and this guy is now basically condensing the story and saying the only thing it's about is women complaining, makes no sense, right? It makes no sense. And it seems like there's only women characters. It's like Viserys is basically our main character for the first couple episodes, along with people like Daemon, Corlys, all these other characters. And so I don't really understand this whole idea that it's just women complaining. Alicent is a character that does do a bit of complaining, and do you know why? It's because she's living a life in which has already been constructed for her. She is basically Sansa of this time period. She is someone that is basically having to follow exactly what her father tells her to do. She has to basically seduce Viserys, get him to marry her. She doesn't want to do that, right? She's basically having to put on her mother's dress that, again, her mother's dead, trying to seduce this older king who is her best friend's father. And now she's basically is there just to have children, right? That's her role in society. She doesn't get any real enjoyment. She has to raise children, right? She has to run the risk of dying in pregnancy like Rhaenyra's mother did. And so all this time, she's also fracturing this relationship with Rhaenyra. And so it only gets worse and worse and worse. And that's what the whole story is about, is showing the differences in the lifestyles of these two women. One woman who does not want to go into this society in which, you know, Rhaenyra and Alicent have to struggle with, right? Going into this whole thing I just talked about with Alicent, basically being a product of just, you're there to make children for your husband, and specifically males. Rhaenyra rejects that, while Alicent has to accept it. And so Alicent and Rhaenyra are already at odds because of that, because Alicent has to play by the rules while Rhaenyra doesn't, because she's a Targaryen, she has a dragon. And so I guess that what he's talking about by women complaining, but that's a terrible argument. It makes you sound terrible.
It was women complaining from the beginning to the end. There were no men of interest. The only really great male character was this weakling king. There were a couple of...
That's a interesting one, because Viserys is the only interesting character. Very interesting, given that Daemon is a fan favorite. I don't personally like how Daemon was written as a character, but Daemon is by far one of the favorite characters on the show. I know my friends that have watched the show, Daemon is a standout character for them. Corlys Velaryon, even though he doesn't get as much screen time as he needs, is a fantastic character. Laenor is a pretty solid character as well. But I think this guy is missing that this show is about the women. It's not about the men, right? Like, the men are there. They are definitely big parts of the story. But it's not about that. And even Viserys, which I kind of find interesting, as he talks about Viserys being like a weakling king, it's like, okay, that's kind of condensing who Viserys is, right? Viserys is a character that was heavily expanded upon from Fire and Blood, and showing that he has reasons as to why he does things, right? He wants Rhaenyra to be happy, so he doesn't try to force a marriage on her. And he does all of these things that we as an audience can understand. He doesn't want to be king. He doesn't want to, all these people always trying to use him for some reason or another. These are all made perfectly clear. And I know he said he only watched till episode 5, but even if you look at episode 8, you know, arguing that Viserys is a weakling king, I don't know, maybe for Fire and Blood that works, and I would agree with you, but I don't know if in the show that's really how I would have viewed Viserys.
Mildly interesting, subordinate characters.
Also, he talks about weakling men and things like that, and no interesting ones, yet Aemon's right there.
But it was women complaining, one, that they couldn't be king. You know, why can't I be king? It's like, because you're a woman. That's not fair. You know, that was the whole thing. And they didn't have any reason. And secondly...
They didn't have any reason. Okay, so this is where our difference is. This guy fundamentally, it seems like, doesn't really understand the point of the show, or 2, understands the point of the show but doesn't like that is the point of the show. The point of the show is basically in George's own way of showing how screwed up this system is. That a woman, even when she's literally appointed by her father, who is the ruler, the king at this time, to become queen, she can't. She has pushback. People are not willing to follow that. That's a complete injustice, right? And I think it doesn't really matter your political leaning on this. It shouldn't be brought up into the show, right? The show doesn't lean into those type of things, and making it just women are complaining type thing when they are the people that have no rights. I just fundamentally can't agree with this argument, because I do think it's very interesting that Rhaenyra is trying to break that, right? And you also have Alicent, who on the other side of that is a character that is the opposite of Rhaenyra, and she's fighting for her son to be king, again, going along with the system.
It was like endless scenes of women in labor complaining about it. And you know,
I wonder why they were complaining. They have no medical treatment whatsoever. They have terrible medical service. Women die in pregnancy all the time. We quite literally saw, what was it, 2 that die on the show? Lena and Emma, like we're showing right here, or Emma. I wonder why they don't like being pregnant and then having to give birth, because it's extremely painful. Rhaenyra quite literally in, I think it's episode 10, when she's giving birth to her child, quite literally is in pain, like just going around on the floor, and then loses her child. I wonder why.
You know, it was interesting because they showed you that giving birth was a kind of power. And they showed you how, for instance, the queen was worried when the woman who had been designated the heir to the throne would have a baby. And they had the scene where right after having a baby, she's summoned to bring the baby to the queen. She has to get out of her labor bed and bring the baby to the queen. And here's a little clip of that.
I'm confused where he's going with this. Like, yes, women have power when it comes to birthing children. Like, because they are the ones that can do it, right? So without women, the world doesn't tick, right? You can't reproduce, you can't have, you know, the next generation. And the human population would die. But at the same time, many of these women are being forced into a position where they have to do this, even if they want to or not. Again, Emma Aaron, perfect example. And so the scene that he's referencing here is where Rhaenyra is, well, again, going to see Alicent directly after, which is a horrible thing to do. And this scene really is to show how Rhaenyra feels very alone. Because Laenor as a husband is very absent. We know that he does not swing that way when it comes to love with Rhaenyra. And so, again, this is meant to represent Rhaenyra is alone. She does not have that, and she's living under some really difficult conditions where her every move is being scrutinized by Alicent and the court as a whole, because they're trying to basically delegitimize Rhaenyra as the queen, as the next heir. And so the reason she's talking down here to Laenor this whole time is because A, Laenor was not there to help her with this birthing. 2, he's not a very, again, this is all things Laenor is going to admit later on in the show. He's not there for her. And Rhaenyra knows, again, Rhaenyra's in a ton of pain, but she also knows exactly what Alicent wants. So we're going to skip this scene because we've watched it. We don't need to see the whole scene.
Pause this.
As much as I respect what women go through in creating the human race, it's not inherently oppressive that that's who you are. It's just life. It is just life. And so the way that
it's just life that women are forced to give pregnant are forced to marry people they do not want to marry. Then also basically in a lot of scenarios, again, the way Alicent was with Viserys, that really horrible scene where she just looks dead inside while Viserys is having his way with her. So basically getting raped. So it's okay for all that to happen because women get forced into it in this society. It's like, no, doesn't really seem like that makes sense to me.
Women were depicted was kind of like it was somehow a cheat that they had to go into labor. The men, by the way, in the story treat them quite nicely. They say, what a wonderful thing you've done, and you've been heroic going through this labor. But the women are just constantly dissatisfied, and they're constantly whining. And
oh my God, this guy can't get off this point. This definitely seems like a politically motivated, driven video. I'm gonna leave it at that. Like, it doesn't make any sense what he's saying. Like, does he understand what he's saying? The men treating the women well. I just told you exactly how that's stupid, but think about that as in a whole, right? Like, I know he's talking about the first 5 episodes. Daemon quite literally chokes Rhaenyra in a scene I really hate in episode 10. Oh, apparently he treats her well. Laenor has been neglectful and has not even been a father, really, to these children. And he treated her well? The only person that treats Rhaenyra really well is Viserys. And to a degree, Kristen Cole in the first couple episodes, until then he switched his sides and then calls her a spoiled you-know-what. So, did this guy watch this show? Like, genuinely, like, Viserys and also Daemon do not treat their women that well. Like, he loved Emma, right? He also chose to have her carved up so that he can maybe get this son. Viserys, or Otto, is someone that forces his daughter into something that she does not want. I mean, this guy just doesn't understand the story. He doesn't understand the point of the show.
Care. The scenes that cracked me up the most were these scenes of the queen who is stuck producing babies, and she's got the baby on the knee, and the baby's crying, and the queen is rolling her eyes.
Okay, so let's just look into Alicent's life at this point. It's not just because of the baby. It's because of her whole life. She has no friends, right? Her last friend was Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra feels like she was betrayed by Alicent. She is married to someone that's not very attractive. Again, she's not attracted to at all, but she's forced to have sexual intercourse with this guy, forced to take care of his children. It's just, Alicent is completely unhappy with her life, right? And that's something that I think a lot of people can resonate with if you're looking at people that just the average person, where maybe you aren't enjoying the things that you're doing in your life, in your everyday life. And Alicent's kind of a representation of that, where they've been she's been forced into a system in which she can't escape. She can't get out of it. And so I look at Alicent as a whole, and it's a perfect arc, because then you look at the flip side of it. Rhaenyra is doing the opposite. She's living her life, getting to choose the husband that she wants, and she's even complaining about it to Alicent, which is one of the big reasons that she hates that. And so, yeah, this guy just doesn't. This guy gives me the vibes on a couple accounts. One, he didn't really watch the series, nor did he really care. Two, this is all politically motivated. It's to basically get you to think one way or another. So yeah, I don't know.
Put up with this baby, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. She's the queen. She doesn't have to do anything. Most queens, the maid brings the baby in every now and again. Oh, darling, hi, it's good to see you. Mama loves you. Take the.
I get the point here, but that's also not what this is supposed to say, right? As a mother, you are supposed to, at times, at the very least, to deal with your children, right? You're not going to have some maid or wet nurse or whatever with them all of the time. You're going to be with your child at some point. That's Alicent being a mother, right? So that's just very tone deaf. Doesn't really make any sense. But it's not also, again, the scene is not to show that Alicent hates, dealing with her child or whatever. It's to show that Alicent hates her life. There's the difference.
Them away.
How
Now
she
he's starting
feels
to crack.
trapped.
That's the way that really works, So the queen is a powerful figure, not an unpowerful figure. And yes, the king is more powerful, and that's the way life.
And Alicent is a powerful figure, right? Like, you can be a powerful figure like how Alicent is, but also not enjoy your life. There's many people that have talked about this, whether that be, any type of celebrity or someone you look at and you go, they've had dark periods of their life, even while they've been super rich, super popular. Just one that comes to my mind right away, Selena Gomez has this exact thing, and it relates really well to Alicent, where she's on top of the world, but still has those feelings.
In those days. And so the constant complaining about it, there was no reason to care who had the throne, because there was nothing at stake. So none of it mattered.
Let's review that one more time. We shouldn't care. There was no stakes. He has not talked about what the plot of the show even is yet. Like, he hasn't, like, all he said is women are complaining. Man. It sounds like he doesn't like women. That's what it sounds like. I know I'm kind of putting words in his mouth, but it sounds like he does not care about women's issues whatsoever. Like,
it didn't matter. And so after a while, the visuals got boring. After a while, the characters got boring. And finally, I just have to say this. One thing that really bugs me about I love long form television. I love watching a show that can, splay out like a novel and all that. But people keep saying to me, oh, you've got to get to the 6th episode. If you don't grab me.
Nobody says that. I don't know who said that to you about House of the Dragon, but the way I would have said it is, if you didn't like House of the Dragon within the first 3 episodes, you weren't going to like it. Like, nothing happens in episode 6 that makes you go, oh yeah, this is why I'm going to really like it now. No. What? And also, okay, I would say Game of Thrones is almost a bit more like that than House of the Dragon is, because House of the Dragon kind of lays out exactly what the story is. There's not nearly as much mystery. Whereas, like, a Game of Thrones, and I think a Game of Thrones' season 1 is better than House of the Dragons by a decent chunk. But the point he just made here is he's talking about stakes. In Game of Thrones, you do kind of have to wait on the stakes for a while. Like, yes, episode 1 is really big because you end with Bran getting pushed. But think about it, right? Ned doesn't really uncover the plot of what's going on until like episode 6, episode 7. Like, some of the things that are going on don't really, the big moments anyway, happen until like episode 6 or 7. So like, I think the comment he just made, I've made more to my friends about a Game of Thrones than I have about House of the Dragon. Because I think House of the Dragon, it lays out everything for you right away. That's my opinion. But what I think is very frustrating about videos like this is this guy just complaining. Like, he's talking about women complaining in this video. He said nothing basically about the entire plot. He said nothing on maybe character motivations, why he feels as though these women complain. This is just honestly a very inaccurate video. This is a video that is driven for literally no reason towards politics.
My question is this. If I have to go through 5 boring hours to get to the 6th interesting hour, on my deathbed, are you going to give me those 5 hours back that I wasted getting to your lousy 6th episode because you don't know how to tell a story?
Okay, so he just contradicted himself, regardless of what he just said. He literally said, if it's 5 boring episodes and then you get to the 6th, then it's a really good episode. Do I get the 5 hours back? Well, if the episode 6 was really good and you really enjoyed it, it means that those first 5 episodes like really built it up. But I do agree with him on the fact that like, if you are not hooked into a show within the first 5 episodes, you're probably not going to like it. Like, Rings of Power was such a slow show that by the time you even got to where maybe the stakes started rising in that show, you just didn't care. So I agree with him on that point, I guess. But this guy says lousy story writing, which is very fascinating to me, given that I think House of the Dragon, 90% of it has some very good, like, top tier writing when it comes to TV shows coming out nowadays. Like, TV shows nowadays have terrible writing. I mean, look at Star Wars, look at Marvel. They're big, you know, proponents of that. The Witcher has gone down in quality. You know, I don't understand that comment to me.
No, I'm done. House of the Dragon is over. It sucked. I'm not watching anything for 6 episodes to get to the good part. It really did not understand what was great and what was beautiful about the original, which was that the stakes.
This fella here did not understand what made a Game of Thrones good and great. So very hypocritical coming from him, in my opinion, given that he doesn't understand the plot of House of the Dragon and he made no attempts to really explain it at all. Right? Like, at all. He did. There's nothing more that I hate when I see someone that says, this sucks. They don't, because you're just shouting something into the void. You're not giving any constructive criticism as to why that thing may suck. What is your reasoning, right? Like, why do you not like something, right? Like, what's the point of typing in, like, for instance, comments that I will not respond to or instantly remove on my channel is if you just respond something like, this is bad. Okay, well, why is this bad? Why did you not like the video? Because if you tell me why you didn't like the video, then I can maybe change what I'm doing or things like that. Like, things that I enjoy, right? Let's talk about 2 situations in which you talk about something. So for instance, back in the day, this is for real OGs, I did a time period where I would put like video game footage over me talking, right? So I would have something for you guys to look at. And I thought, you know, maybe that's not a bad idea, right? It was a bad idea. And so some of you guys told me that, right? You would say, you know, I like your channel and some of the content you do, but I really don't, you know, like the gaming stuff because it's maybe distracting or it doesn't relate to what you're talking about. And so I took that and I changed it, right? Those are good comments. But if you just say, I hate the video, well, I have no way of either improving that or having a dialogue with you and maybe, you know, you changing my mind or I changing your mind. And so videos like this, which had no discussion points, was very surface level, didn't really actually give any logical opinions or anything that really you could actually have a conversation about, because we fundamentally just disagree on certain things. Like, and this is the thing, right? I've never talked about my own politics, and this guy definitely is giving me right-leaning, you know, politics. And this is my thing, right? I am someone that I'll tell you guys right now, I'm more right-leaning. I've not said that on the channel. I don't discuss it, but it does not matter what your politics are to like the show. Politics are not in this show. Modern politics are not in this show like they shouldn't be, right? Rings of Power did that, and it was received really poorly. And so, yeah, I think this guy's very tone deaf, just in total about what House of the Dragon's about.
The characters were real, the situations were real, and it mattered.
It's ironic that he's saying the characters were real and stuff like that, and things mattered, and showing this
a lot because you were just really wrapped into it. This doesn't matter at all. Man, that was great. And if you want more great content,
I don't want more content. That wasn't great at all, not even close. I don't know what, I think this video made me much more like, I wasn't visually as angry in this video compared to the last reaction we did, but this guy just obviously has no idea what he's talking about. Like, he's very much a casual, maybe even a casual viewer. Again, he said he didn't even watch the entire first season and then made a review about it. Kind of interesting. I'm someone that didn't like Rings of Power, watched the entire thing so I could give a complete review as to why it was bad. Very surface level, not much really here to talk about because he didn't present anything to talk about. Again, he made a 9-minute video. He did not talk about House of the Dragon until the 5-minute mark. So this was some nice clickbait as well. But yeah, so he talked about House of the Dragon for quite literally like 4 minutes maybe. And in that time period, all he could say was women were complaining. So yeah, I mean, you were complaining. So I guess I'll just dislike your video now. I can be petty like that, and I will be. All right, goodbye, guys. This was an interesting video to react to. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think I'm in the wrong here? Maybe he had some good opinions. In my opinion, he didn't. But, you know, I guess everybody is entitled to their own opinion, even though I may hate it sometimes, because people just say stupid stuff on the internet. But thank you guys all for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.